There we go. So we might even not even get the video, but Raheem Kassam, thank you so much for joining K Saves the USA today. So one of the things that I always do, and this is probably going to annoy everyone listening, but I hate when hosts try to explain what I do for a living.
Yep.
So
I've watched your previous episodes and I know what you're going to ask me to do, so I'm happy to do it.
Oh, you're so sweet for doing that. Yeah, so please go ahead. Let's tell all the listeners.
So my name is Raheem, and I have basically been on that cusp of politics and media for all of my adult life. I started because I went to university in London and saw a lot of radical Islam at my university, at the University of Westminster. So that was where I started. And then I worked for Nigel Farage for a while, working on the Brexit stuff. And now I'm the editor-in-chief of a website called The National Pulse, which does investigative work, especially into where American politicians are selling their nation out to the Chinese Communist Party. And of course, we've seen quite a lot of that recently. So our work is in high demand at the moment. So just like you are saving the USA, I like to think I'm doing my part too.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think so. What I really want to focus on today, because we're both British, we both live in America. I did.
Yeah. Don't think I haven't heard you being quite cruel about the English.
Oh,
so
well,
we'll have to talk about it a little bit.
I know, and you're the worst type of English, according to me. Just because you're from the southeast, right?
Oh yeah, I'm from London, West London.
Yeah, so you're the most English of all of the English, really. Let's be honest. But no,
I don't know if Londoners even count as English anymore. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's such a global city, right? With Sadiq Khan as the mayor and all that. I would probably even. Here's the thing: it's meant as a compliment. You'll take it as an insult. You're more English than Londoners are.
Oh, yeah, I definitely take that as an insult. No, I'm Welsh, I promise. No, I think it's I think it's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize how different what most people, I think, from outside of the UK who maybe, or even people inside the UK who maybe haven't been to America, everyone sort of assumes that there's a lot of similarities between the two cultures. Absolutely not the case, I don't think. At least I don't feel like there is. Like, I had such a culture shock when I moved here. And I moved here as this sort of screaming liberal socialist, and then lived in California for all of 10 minutes and was like, actually, I've completely evolved and I will never, ever, ever go back to the left ever again. Like, how can, yeah, because it's communism, like you said. I mean, that's really what we're fighting against. And I saw something you posted just now about how using the word woke is almost like kid gloves when it comes to what really is this kind of really heavy sway in the left towards that kind of communist movement, which absolutely shocked me. I know my family are all sort of like very anti-Thatcher type liberals, and they're all, you know, I like the tattoos and smoking pot and all those sorts of things. They were fine with all of that, and now that I'm a conservative, they're like, you've broken our hearts. But no,
yeah, and as you will know as a Welsh person, that it was the Labour Party that closed more of the pits than Thatcher did. So, you know, I once got into a heated debate about that with none other than David Lammy. A name will make no difference to any American listening to this, but just one of the David Lammy, I suppose, Kay, would be what what's the equivalent over here, like Cory Booker or something? This, race baiting, all of that sort of thing. And I was on a panel with him on the BBC probably about 10 years ago now. He had no idea about any of this stuff. He's just a talking head goon. Yeah, I understand. Believe me, I understand. It's not been easy for me as well, growing up in a Muslim family. Coming out in the way I did, especially against Islam and all of that. So I empathize with you greatly.
Well, I mean, that must have been quite a shock. And when did you move out to the States?
2016. I used to come here a lot. I used to report from here a lot. But when I fully moved here, it was 2016. It was right as Steve Bannon was asked to run the Trump campaign, and I was on vacation in Washington D.C. seeing some of my friends, and my phone rings, and it's Steve, and I pick up, and he goes, "Hey, where are you right now?" I said, "I'm in D.C." He goes, "I need you to just stay put, stay there, don't go back." I said, "What are you talking about? My flight's tomorrow. Go back to London." He goes, "You can't do that. You have to stay there." I said, "All right, why?" He goes, "I can't tell you. You'll find out tomorrow morning on the front page of the New York Times." Next day, front page of the New York Times, Bannon moves from Breitbart to Trump campaign. And so I took over his radio show on Sirius XM, and I've been here since. I'm not that ecstatic about having been in DC since, but as you know, America is just a marvelous place. So I try and get out to real America as much as possible.
Yeah, it really is the greatest country on earth. And I also moved out here sort of 2015, 2016. So been here about the same amount of time. So where is real America for you when you need to flee the city? Because I just fled California earlier this summer, and I'm living in North Carolina, which I love. Absolutely love it here. Would like to move more up into the mountains and sort of do as much work as possible remotely from there. But yeah, so what defines real America for you?
I can't empathize with that because I like to do as little work as possible. But I think I am in love with Arizona. I was in love with Arizona the first time I ever set foot there. Prescott, the old Whiskey Row, where Barry Goldwater gave his announcement speech for president in 1963 on that Yavapai County building. Scottsdale up in the mountains, and you talk about weed. Arizona's got great weed, and it's got honestly, it's got everything. It's got absolutely everything. It's stunning. People are friendly. If I don't make my life there, I've done it wrong.
Well, that's so inspiring, and I love the desert. I used to try and spend as much time up in Joshua Tree before all the homeless people moved in. That was my escape when I was living in Los Angeles. So, and I think it's so interesting, right? We both come from, what is the rainiest archipelago in the universe, where, I like to refer to it as a sort of reverse Game of Thrones. We're all sitting there waiting for summer, and have been forever. And then we move out here, and yeah, the desert is really that. Just it's almost like every single one of my best friends is he's Native American Indian, and you can really feel that kind of spirit in everything. Now, I did read that you are an atheist. Is that correct? Am I correct in that assumption?
I was. I would. What? Let me put it this way. I have been going to church now for about the last 2 years, and there's not a single part of that I regret. There's not a single moment of that I regret. And I'm still trying to figure out, what kind of, denominationally, what I prefer, because a lot of the American churches now, and I know this might insult some people or offend some people, but remember, offense is taken, not given. I don't like the happy clappy stuff. I don't like the jingly jangly guitars and all of that. I kind of want my religion to fill me with a sense of fear and guilt and dread. So this is how you know I came from Islam. But so Catholicism is far more attractive to me in that regard. So I'm finding my way around and becoming as au fait as I can be with the Bible and all of that. But it's early doors for me. But I wouldn't call myself an atheist anymore.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. Again, very, very similar. There must be something with us Brits and moving out to America, because I think I'd spent about 3 months here, went back to the UK, had my sudden oh my goodness, God exists. And then sort of just went from there. And again, haven't really settled on any kind of significant denomination, just have my own one-on-one with the big man upstairs, shall we say. Definitely don't like all of that guilt and misery. No offense to pretty much everyone I know who's Catholic, I think, at this point. But I'm sure you guys...
I need it. You see, I've got too much joy in my life, so I need the balance on the weekends, No, I think you're right. Firstly, there's something about Brits in the desert. You know, Lawrence of Arabia. It's this kind of, it's so exotic for us, and people, Arizonans will be like, "What are you talking about, exotic?" But it is. It does feel that way to me. It feels like I'm sort of, exploring a new landscape, a new world. And you go out into the desert, especially if you have been helping yourself to some of the plant life out there, let's say, and you see these like 30-foot cacti, and there's nothing you can do but stand at the bottom of this thing and just marvel at it. And there's something about that. And I think you're right. There's also something about coming to America, talking to godly people and understanding their motivations and how it impacts their lives. And you realize, I don't know, I won't speak for you, but I realized that we grew up in a godless, secular, Eurocentric society where God resided in Brussels, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. So it really, I mean, America. Americans always say to me, "Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for trying to save this country." And I say, "You don't understand. This country saved me. I'm just doing as little as I can to give back in some way."
Well, I'm absolutely going to steal that from you because I could not agree more. I actually had this conversation this morning with someone where I was like, if I'd been stuck in the UK, I wouldn't be alive anymore. I love my hometown. I mean, I have, love-hate relationship. From? Swansea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been all around there. We did school trips out there and all. I mean, I never fell in love with Wales, I got to tell you.
It's not for everyone. I miss the culture, but it's funny the number of people I've met. Like I was actually at a pub.
Sorry, I almost did a spit take there. The culture.
Well, the alcoholism and the violence.
The great Welsh culture.
Yeah, and Indian food.
The best cover song ever is Newport. The cover version of Newport from New York. That's the best. Chips and cheese will make you feel brand new, washed down with a special brew. Was that how you grew up?
Basically, I have arguments all the time with people about chips, beans, and cheese. That's still my go-to. Like as soon as I start getting slightly tipsy, I'm just like,
either need a crab or chips, beans, and cheese.
Bird's eye potato waffles fried in a frying pan, beans, cheese, done. A little bit of Tabasco maybe, done.
See, I like a little bit of Worcestershire, so yeah, I'll feel that. That works. How are you on Marmite though?
Love it.
Okay,
love it.
Good.
Grew up with it. Can't help myself. Help myself. I've given every American girlfriend I had Marmite on toast, and you can imagine what I've always filmed it. So one day maybe I'll make a compilation of all these girls eating Marmite and grimacing.
That sounds like it'll go viral in a heartbeat back in the UK. That's really good. I'm going to start doing that. Just like anyone that comes to my house, I'm just going to be like, okay, but the deal is you got to eat Marmite, which, by the way, horrendously overpriced in America. Horrendously overpriced. I remember going to Lidl's once and being able to pick up a thing of Marmite. One of my cats is trying to destroy everything down here. But I remember picking up a thing of Marmite. I think it was like reduced down to like 59 pence. So about 60 cents, something like that these days. And, out here, you're looking at about $100 million for a small tub.
Yeah, you got to take out a mortgage.
Yeah.
Marmite.
Marmite mortgage. Oh my gosh, there's a song in there somewhere or something.
So in England, I remember growing up and going to the Sainsbury's near my house, and they would have like champagne infused Marmite. Did you ever see this? And
no,
it was like
Marmite flavored chips, but crisps.
It was like £3, champagne infused Marmite with a little gold lid. That was great. It was wonderful. Now, you can barely get the plain stuff for about $20.
Oh my God!
There are downsides to being here, ladies and gentlemen.
There are.
The Marmite inflation is outrageous. It's outrageous. Thanks, Joe Biden.
Yeah, thanks, Joe Biden. Racist. We need to get in touch with the manufacturers of Marmite and start some like big new national campaign. I can see the billboards already. Like you either love it or you hate it, but let's be honest, you're still gonna try it.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing. But okay, so Marmite aside, I do have a little bit of gotcha journalism from a mutual friend of ours. So obviously you've been living out here about the same length of time as me, and I heard that you're a fan of Wendy's and that the plain crispy nuggets are your favorites, right? The plain ones, not the spicy
How
ones.
dare you? How dare you? How very dare you? This is an outrage. This is the, plain nuggets have no place on planet Earth. Okay, just no place on planet Earth. Spicy nugs are the way to go. 9 nugs with a ghost pepper dip, phenomenal. You see, I'm Indian of extraction. You mentioned the other Indian. I'm dot, not feather, right? For the non-politically correct people who still say things like that. Terrible. I condemn it. I would never. I like everything to have a bit of kick to it, a little bit of heat to it. And those spicy nugs with that ghost pepper sauce, I mean, after a pint of tequila or two, that will really sort you out.
I could not agree more. So thank you, Kate Badura, for that from GETTR. That was a good one. She, when she found out you're coming on the show, she was like, "Oh my god, there's so many things you got to make fun of him for." And that was definitely my favorite. And I couldn't find the rest. I think my phone's been playing up because the new iPhones are coming out soon. So obviously everything's going wrong with the current ones. Yeah, very shameful.
Help you upgrade. I won't even. I was in France with Marion Maréchal Le Pen one night, the niece of Marine Le Pen. Mm-hmm. And we're out and we're in this like Bobo neighborhood. Everyone's having a great time. There's a bunch of us, like 12 of us or something. Then we sit down, we go to get some dinner. And I'm sitting there and I'm eating my dinner and I look over and there's just like a bunch of French people singing at me, including Marion. And she sings this song. We go outside for a cigarette. She goes, "What do you think of the song?" I said, "Well, I don't know what you were saying." She says, "It's a song that we French sing to make fun of the Brits. What do you think?" I said, "Well, I think it's really cute that you have songs about us. We don't think about you." So that's what I will say about Kate, is that I won't make fun back because I don't think about you, Kate.
It's so cutting. I love it. It's so mean. See, I make jokes like that and people are just like, "Oh, you're such a bitch, Kay." And I'm like,
I know. Oh no, people don't like me. Don't get me wrong. People don't like me. I'm not a likable person. Because I like dark humor. I like, I like making fun of people. For us, I think this is what people don't understand about the Brits is that we like you if we make fun of you. If we're not making fun of you, we don't want to know you. Yes. And I'll say like what are genuinely like nasty things, but like in a jocular way to my friends. And it'll all be like, "Oh, you can't really say things like that." And this is one of the things America has lost in the last couple of decades is this great sense of irony that was instilled in America by these great comics like George Carlin and all of that. Mm-hmm. They instilled in America the sense of irony that it's been leech. I mean, look at the left. You say you'll never go back to the left. I think that's probably right. I mean, I grew up as a Tony Blair fan, right? And I will never make such a mistake again to side with these literalists, these people who have no sense of irony, no sense of humor, no sense of depth, no mind that generates abstractions. All of that talent, all that creative talent and energy now resides on the right. Now, I don't think the right is very good at it yet, because it takes time and systems and institutions and trial and error to get good at that stuff. But I totally agree with that sentiment. And it's a great shame people don't realize that we're not being bitchy. We want to be your friend. This is how we try and be your friend.
This is how we show love. We're going to make fun of you, and we're going to probably make fun of your mum as well. I'm glad that you brought up that kind of divergence in that humor from the left, because it really has just sort of dissipated into nothing. And I very much felt that whilst I was living in Los Angeles. I would try and make these really self-deprecating jokes. And, I lived in an apartment building where during lockdown, me and all my neighbors would just go and drink by the pool pretty much all day, every day when we weren't at least trying to work a little bit. And I would sort of make jokes about like climate change and how, at this point, I just can't even fucking have the conversation with most people. So I'm just like, "You're all getting it wrong. Yay. We're all fucked." But we always were. So it's fine. But I think what's really exciting about, now that I'm sort of surrounded, like my entire social network, my, personal and professional, pretty much everyone is right of center, if not to like the kind of far extreme right, the sense of humor, it upsets me that most of these men and women don't talk about it publicly. You know, I work with the Daily Caller, and I think they do a really good job of it. But when I was going through the process of sort of starting to work with them and what that would look like, I said to them, you know, like point blank, I was like, I want to be sort of really disgusting, like Hunter S. Thompson meets that kind of like rock and roll conservatism that I keep hearing people like Tucker Carlson talk about, but I don't really see it manifest yet. And so that kind of niche gap, I think it's so superb that we can kind of bring that dark British humor with us, and at least
that is what we're here
to
for.
slightly push it in. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that is honestly, I think that's what we're here for. You know, on my podcast, I swear freely, and I get some complaints about it. You know, even when I tweet, I swear, because swearing, I'm not saying that one should you know, vacuously and freely just deploy swear words. And I know in a previous episode you were talking about this as well, and you used the word cuss, which by the way, fuck off, right? But there is a time, there is a place, it is part of the language, it is part of the lexicon. I always describe it to people who are squeamish about it in this way. You know, think about it as italicization or underlining a certain point. You know, the F word can do that. For us, of course, in England, the C word can do that very pointedly. And I don't think America's quite ready for that yet. But I think you know, if we look at what is the most popular political chant in America today, it's not lock her up, it's not build a wall, it's not drain the swamp, it's fuck Joe Biden. Because guess what? At a certain point in time, you do have to just say, no, fuck you, Fauci, fuck you, Biden, and let these people know that we're not being rhetorical when we say this. Like, we are coming for you. Your philosophy's days on this planet are numbered, and I think there's no better way to express that passion sometimes than by swearing. So I think this is what we're here to do: is to teach Americans to, you know, their grandparents weren't, you know, squeamish about this stuff. Or you think these guys who built this country with their bare hands were, you know, getting cuts and stitches and breaking things, building these huge, you know, the Empire State Building. You know, that old picture of those guys sitting on the thing. Oh, you think one guy dropped his coffee cup off that thing and went, whoopsie daisy? You know, no, he went, oh, fuck.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And, you know, it was kind of nice. The one upside, I think, to living in California is, you know, whenever I swore, people would laugh. That's like the one nice thing. They're like, oh, look at the British person swearing. Isn't that so sweet and twee? But then, yeah, when it comes to the C word, or the cunt word, as I like to call it, I always like to explain to people, like, firstly, my best friends are the silliest bunch of cunts I know, and I love them to death. And, you know, I've got voice memos and voice memos and voice memos on my phone from all the kids I grew up with, who I guess is like quote unquote adults now, like we all are. But, you know, 99% of the time it starts with, all right, cunt, so here's what's going on today. And there's two different ways to use it, right? So we don't pronounce the hard T. So that kind of softens it a lot. And, you know, contextually, I think you can kind of pick up on the fact that we're not trying to be dickheads about it. And then there's the way that you use it when you're trying to be like Tony Soprano, where it's like, that's the last thing you're going to hear before I rip your bloody head off. And so I really do hope that it sort of starts to evolve. I do quite like, you know, Veep, In the Loop, those kinds of shows, or movies in the thick of it as well, where that kind of introduced more of the swearing to American culture, but still not in the kind of way where anyone's willing to stand up and say it publicly, other than in these epic football games. And I guess that kind of leads me. So you bring up sort of like, fuck Joe Biden, fuck you, Fauci. When I first moved out to America, I remember sitting at my kitchen dinner table before I left. And I've told this story a few times on the show. But my dad said that it was the first time in his life he'd ever heard me be quiet for more than a few days in a row. Because I wake up, I start talking, maybe I'll stop when I go to sleep. And And I think it's because I had this sort of like resonance in me. I was like, I don't know what it is. And maybe this is the Welsh gypsy culture in me. But I knew I was going to live through a huge moment in history moving out here. And I think America is very good at creating these big moments. You know, it is the most influential country in the world, probably the solar system, almost definitely the galaxy. But if you had asked me back then, you know, I pride myself in predictive trends. Like I know how to analyze large groups of people and tell you exactly how they're going to think and feel about literally anything. I did not see this culture shift happening. Like, not just for me, but for the country as a whole. You know, on my first flight out here, I was sitting next to a guy who described himself as extreme right wing. And I was like, oh my God. He was like, yeah, I bury my guns in my garden kind of thing. And I was like, oh my God, which now I'm like, oh yeah, I would totally do that if I owned guns. But in 2016, 2015, I never could have predicted this cultural shift, even at the start of the Trump administration. And I back then was writing things that was pretty anti-Trump. Obviously, that like very quickly shifted towards being very pro-Trump because I sort of, you know, I mean, oh my God, sorry, one of my cats is just Wonky. You're a fame whore. Get out of here. But I never could have predicted these shifts. What was that like for you as a Brit coming out here, seeing that change, especially coming from what is like one of the most sort of communist, woke, liberal, you know, happy clappy hand job each other because we love each other, but not really. We're going to talk shit about everyone behind their backs culture, to what is America today? Oh my God. To what is America today? Not my bloody charger. Piece of shit.
You summed up, this is a whole performance, I'm enjoying it. You summed up Westminster very well. I mean, Westminster, for an American audience who can't necessarily understand what I mean when I say Westminster, London is effectively two cities like Georgetown and Washington was before it all just became Washington, D.C. And you had the City of London, which was the merchants and people who made their wealth outside of government and government work and the sphere of influence of politics. And then you have the city of Westminster, which is all the political sphere. So it's kind of like the equivalent of Capitol Hill. Westminster is I mean, the swamp doesn't even begin to compare to these pedophilic, sniveling, rotund, smelly, supine people that work in Westminster. I mean, these are the worst people on planet Earth. The worst, barring maybe the upper echelons of the Chinese Communist Party. These are the second worst people on planet Earth. I mean, there is not a vice or a just moral pit, I think, that isn't freely expressed and celebrated in Westminster. So I ran from that. I ran from it because it was poisoning me. It was poisoning everything around it, poisoned the whole country. I mean, look at where the country is now. I don't know how you feel about the guy, but you know, Boris Johnson, and I'm actually supposed to be meeting his wife's ex-boyfriend tonight. But Boris Johnson and I knew each other. I helped him out on the 2012 mayoral re-election campaign. He also used to work with an ex-girlfriend of mine. And just to tell you the character of the man, Boris Johnson, to which you, I think, will respond, lad, but I think is a particularly poor thing to have as a prime minister. He would look at this girl, ex-girlfriend of mine, look at her in the eye every time, you know, passing in a room, a reception or whatever, and not recognize her. And then he'd look at her tits and he'd go, "Oh, it's you." And it's just,
wow.
He's just a dirtbag. He's a scumbag, and he doesn't stand by anything. So anyway, long story short, I come over here thinking, hooray, freedom, go to the shooting range, all that stuff. And the change, the shift. But here's the thing: yes, the shift is soul destroying. But the real problem is people now look to me as somebody to solve that. You know, to right that vessel that's been turned in the wrong direction. And I think about the responsibilities of that. How many people will listen to this and take things away from it and genuinely reflect on it? And that honestly is the more difficult part of all of that. It's one thing to see, the United States of America, phrase, that phrase that should send chills down the spines of every freedom-loving person and should send petrified chills down the spine of every tyrant and totalitarian and terrorist out there. And it doesn't anymore. And to that phrase, the United States of America used to just uplift me and uplift, I think, the idea that I was going to America on holiday, maybe, was just, how that was. That was just such a wonderful feeling. It was different from going to like Dubai or going to Portugal or whatever, right? You're going to America. You're going to America. And I used to land, when I used to visit DC, I used to land at Dulles Airport, and there were just these sea of flags that you could see. As soon as you walked out of the airport, I would light up a cigarette and I'd just look at all these flags. I think, isn't this wonderful that they love their country and they love their flag so much? And then I just watched it change incrementally to the point where now there are streets you'll walk down, including my street, by the way. There are streets you'll walk down where the predominant flag on the street is no longer the American flag. It's either the Black Lives Matter flag or the LGBT flag. And I just think that's it. That's the microcosm of the shift that's happened. And it's how am I supposed to change that? How are you supposed to change that? You've got these big, burly, brutish American dudes, right, who are stacked and raise families and all this stuff, and you want me? you're recruiting me to think I'm 5'8"? I think I've been in 2 fights, and have won 0 of them. But I guess rhetorically, intellectually, academically, yes, there are things we can do. But I truly believe that this country is going to be saved by the fruits of its own people. Real American men especially need to step up and do something about all of this. Because listen, this nation ain't going to be saved from some intellectual perch on Capitol Hill. It's going to be saved from Arizona. It's going to be saved from the mountains of North Carolina. It's going to be saved from Florida. And, I guess that answers your question. I don't feel like I've done an adequate job at it, but that's as close as I can get to really putting into words what I feel.
I mean,
bullshit. Have you seen this new movie?
No.
There's a new movie out, Michael Caine and Aubrey Plaza. It's called Bestsellers. And he plays a grumpy old author. He basically plays me in 40 years' time. He plays a grumpy old author who doesn't want to see anyway. He walks around with a walking stick, but it's a whale's dick. And he just hates the world, and he calls it all bullshit. And he goes on stage at one point. He's supposed to be doing a reading from his book, and he just picks it. And actually, I have one of my books right here, so I'll just plugging that. And he opens it, and he goes, bullshit, 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 bullshit. And it goes viral in the movie. It goes viral. Everybody's wearing bullshit T-shirts. And I feel like we need to get to that point where we're calling bullshit on everything to start again. You have to start. I was sitting in a restaurant earlier. I'm sorry to be overly talkative here, but you got me going now. I was sitting in a restaurant earlier, and there's quotes all along the kind of, what do you call those things? Cornices? I don't know. And one of them said, institutions are more powerful than men. And I went, ooh, that's fucked up. Because yes, as a conservative, I believe in fostering good institutions, but I don't think the institution should be more powerful than the man.
No.
And that's the problem, is we've vested interest in, not just vested interest in institutions that you even know of, like the UN or whatever, but you vested all this stuff in institutions like the NIH. Well, before the pandemic, how many of us knew what the NIH was, or the NIAID, or the US Institute for Peace? But these are all like multi-billion-dollar organizations that dominate the political landscape and the philosophical landscape of this country. We don't even know who's the president of the US Institute for Peace. You don't know. I don't know. But they command massive budgets, and they change the world with these budgets, and we don't know who they are. We didn't know who Fauci was really before this pandemic. I mean, obviously the HIV situation happened, but I wasn't really around then, so I didn't have any frame of reference for that.
Yeah.
So this little Italian cunt comes out of nowhere and starts going, "You gotta wear a mask. You gotta not wear a mask." I'm like, "Who the fuck are you? And why am I listening to you? You sniveling little shit." You know, he's 5'2" and 100 pounds soaking wet, and this is the guy, the highest paid bureaucrat in the United States of America, Anthony Fauci. What a crock! What a crock!
Yeah, it's absolute horseshit. And it also, I mean, that's basically what California, I didn't realize it before I moved here, right? Because I had that same thing as you, you know, my parents and I first came here on holiday when I was about 11, and my mum said, she was like, "This is the only time you're ever going to get to go." Oh, sorry, I got to do my mum's voice. "This is the only time you're ever going to be able to come here, ever. And then we ended up coming back twice more because we just loved it so much. And then I like completely changed the course of my life. And I was like, no, like if I'm going to be stuck in, you know, this like quote unquote society that we've created, because I'm basically like, sounds like, who did you say was in the movie? Aubrey Plaza and Michael Caine?
Michael Caine.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Caine in that movie now, already. Like I am a 75-year-old disgruntled coal miner who just wants to be left alone. But I came here to embrace that idea of freedom. I don't know if you've heard of it. You know, it's sort of like going out the window right now, particularly where you are in DC. And then I moved to California and realized pretty quickly, like, oh, no. You don't get to actually have free thought. You get to within these sort of realms. And that's what these institutions do. They take away from the actual founding purpose of America, which was to like completely flee that persecution, whether it was religious or whatever. And they've destroyed that notion of freedom to the point where, you know, taking people's jobs away, taking away, you know, freedom for you to decide whether or not you want to get a vaccine or not. I don't personally, because I had actually heard of the NIH and I thought, a vaccine with less than 5 years of research, that's not really for me. Like, that just doesn't really sound like a very good idea, but, you know, what do I know? Here's this, 5 foot nothing, you know, greasy Italian wanker who's going to tell me how to live. And I'm just like, well, this is not the point. I didn't move here for this shit. And so, you know, I am glad that you said that it is going to be these places like Arizona, like the mountains up here in North Carolina, Florida. You mentioned Florida. That felt pointed. Why did you bring up Florida? Was there a reason behind bringing up Florida? Do you think DeSantis, like, do you have some big feelings about, because I've never actually been to Florida. Everyone I've ever spoken to who I like and respect loves Florida. So I do need to go and visit at some point. But,
I interviewed Ron DeSantis on the radio, on that radio show I took over about, it's been 5 years ago.
Wow.
And I think he was a congressman at the time. And I didn't know who he was. The producer had booked him. I said, all right, whatever. Like, it's nice to have a congressman on the show. So I pulled up his Wikipedia page and I went, hold on a minute. You know, military service, beautiful family, you know, all this stuff. I think I even said to him on air, I might have to try and find this. I think I said to him, you're going to be president one day. And yeah, I do have strong feelings about DeSantis. And I have the same feelings about DeSantis now that I had when I first saw Donald Trump at the Planet Hollywood Ballroom during Freedom Fest in 2015, when it was a whole libertarian crowd, and they really didn't like the idea of this nationalist Donald Trump figure coming in. And by the end of it, if he had 20% support in the room at the beginning, he had 75% walking out. And I was the editor-in-chief of Breitbart's London bureau back then. And despite Breitbart's proclivity towards Ted Cruz back then, I unilaterally made the decision to publish an article, actually written by my friend who was in the room with me, about how it had to be Trump and how Trump was the man for that moment. And I do have that sense of DeSantis right now. Whether or not it's this time, I don't know if we know if Trump even wants to run again. Yeah, I actually think he doesn't, but he thinks the hand of history, to quote Tony Blair, is on his shoulder. So I think, you know, Trump will do what's best for the country. But DeSantis would just make an incredible, and Florida's cool. So I used to travel to America quite a lot as a kid because I got family in Orlando, and you know, you go Disney and you go, Epcot and all that stuff. But real Florida is way cooler than tourist Florida. You know, getting out there, and I have the great opportunity, and I'm always really taken aback by Americans' hospitality here. I'm going to speak at a conference in 2 weeks' time in Miami called AmpFest. And I've never been there before. I don't really know what to expect, but the organizers are like, look, we do it at the Trump Doral. There's a golf tournament on the Saturday. And I'm just like, well, this sounds just bloody amazing. You know, that just sounds like heaven. You know, Florida, golf, Trump Hotel, like that's the dream, right? That was always the American dream. That's why rappers used to rap about being Donald Trump.
Yeah.
You know, Mac Miller, you know, all of those great like Trump songs about Trump. That was the American. He was the American. He still is, as far as I'm concerned, the American dream. And they've ripped it apart and they've turned it on its head. And you know, those things are the things that bug me. I think you and I probably think quite similarly in that regard. I said it was me in 50 years' time. I would agree with you. It's kind of me now. The only thing that keeps me from going absolutely batshit about all of it is that wonderful Arizonan plant life.
Psilocybin will do wonders, to one's mental health.
But I also do think there are reasons to be optimistic. I do. At least I have to. This is still a beautiful country. I just got back from a 3-month-long road trip around the country. The Pacific Coast Highway, across from Arizona back to DC, up through. There's nowhere on earth like it. The Pacific Coast Highway, for any viewers that haven't done that drive, it is literally the most beautiful drive on planet Earth, and it costs nothing to do. You know, just it costs the gas money. Take your car and drive it. And
in California, it's going to cost you $1 million to go 10 miles. Well, but other than that,
fill up in Arizona.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I always say that my biggest heartbreak is California because it's unlivable. It really is unlivable for a multitude of reasons now. It really is that kind of, I refer to it sometimes. Sorry, another one of my cats is joining us. I have far too many of them and I don't like any of them.
You have? I
have 3, but they're all like fancy Siamese ones, and they're all really lovely. Ugh. But this one's not a fame horse. She's just a slut.
Do any of them like you? You say you don't like any of them. Do any of them like you?
They mostly like me. Actually, no, I love them all very dearly. Creature's my favorite, and I tell him all the time, but he's the only one that's not here right now. Because I like to play favorites. But this is Miss Thing, Miss Bitch when she's in a bad mood. And she's pissing me off. But going back to
I agree with you about California.
It's absolutely devastating. So, I remember going there as a young child, and the thing that I fell in love with in California was there was one day we were staying with some friends in Arroyo Grande, which is about equidistant between San Francisco and Los Angeles. I believe it's in San Luis Obispo, within that sort of Big Sur County. And my dad, this is a true story, my dad had been out surfing somewhere, I think like Newgale or something in Wales. Like he'd been out in the lineup, and this guy who's about 20 years older than him, my dad's, he's an older dad. Oh God, he was almost 40 when I was born. But so there are 2 old blokes sitting out there in the lineup, waiting for a wave. And they chat for all of about 30 seconds. And then my dad left a little note, because this is back before, my dad still barely owns a phone. Leaves a little note with just like an email address and phone number for this guy. We, end up, or he and this chap Mike end up exchanging a couple of emails. 2 weeks later, my dad's like, should we go to California then next year on holiday? And my mom's just like, what are we going to do in California? And then she planned this incredible trip. And so from that sort of 30-second meeting and a very sort of, brief set of emails, we go and end up staying with this family. They got about 5 acres, beautiful home. And Mike's wife, Paula, says to me, and again, I was only about 11, I think at the time, maybe 10. She goes, why don't we make pesto pasta for dinner? And I'm like, yeah, okay. She's like, come on, you can come help me get the ingredients. So I was like, oh, Mum, I'm going to go with Paula to the shop to get all the ingredients for pesto. And Paula goes, no, we just got everything in the garden. And I was like, oh, stick a fork in me. I am done. So we go to the garden, get everything we need, not just for pesto pasta, but for, you know, basically the meals that we have for the next like couple of days. You know, yeah, I don't think we had any meat or anything or like any poultry, but other than that, everything from the garden. And that was that for me, because you can't do that in the UK because it's fucking raining all the fucking time.
Well, you didn't have an allotment in Swansea.
My mum actually does have an amazing garden, I will say. The pumpkins are taking over, but it's a bloody brilliant garden. I don't have a green thumb, so I gotta wait for all the bullshit travel restrictions to calm down so she can come out here and help me set up my garden here. Because I will kill everything. Or the cats will. But that was that for me, and I just thought, yeah, this is where I want to dedicate my life to. This is something that you can't get. Like, maybe there's a few places in Europe, but I don't want to have like a conversation with like a board of trustees anytime I want to paint my front door, which you have to do pretty much anywhere in Europe, and it's absolute crap, and no one ever talks about that. But that was what really did it for me. Now, if you got a garden in California, you're not keeping any of that veg yourself because some like very severely ill, mentally ill, homeless person is going to have either stolen everything or they're going to stab you as soon as you walk outside, which is devastating.
With one of your own carrots.
Oh,
You know?
Straight up, like death
Yeah.
by carrot. That's the worst way to go.
Yeah.
But I think I've had a couple of hallucinations like that. But it not just that, but the cost of living. If you do the work, you can still afford to live in California. But the way that it's structured with the taxes, the tax commitment, I mean, you might as well just stay in Britain, but you don't get any like proper free healthcare, which was like the only, I think, decent thing really for me. Well, I grew up in the 90s, so like we had pretty good schools as well. But other than that, like, I mean, California is just, it's unlivable. It's been completely destroyed. I refer to it as that kind of North Korea of America. And I always use it as that poster child and say, don't let your home become this. And then I see all these like young baby commies come out of California and go to like red states and try to turn it blue. And I think they've actually done a pretty successful job in places like particularly Texas. I don't know. You're probably, I don't like talking to many people. You probably have your finger a little bit more on the pulse, but when it comes to this stuff. But I mean, is this, okay, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is this just a city issue? Like, do you, like, other than Florida, do you think that in those more rural, and let's be honest, more like blue collar parts of the country, are they still safe, or are they going to go to the blue check? Like what are you seeing of our future here?
Yeah, I mean, look, so all the gains they've made by doing, their own great migration, has been accidental almost. It's not been part of a concerted effort. And now they've started to realize that, wow, that kind of worked out real well. And so they're plowing resources and energy and money into getting Democrats to leave Democrat states and move into Republican states. So I think it's only going to get worse. I don't see any great pushback. I mean, there is a this is what the right does, right? We moan about things. We just moan about things loudly.
Very British.
Well, not even that loudly, but we don't have to do anything to stop that from happening. So yeah, I do think they're going to keep turning this stuff. I also, this whole thing about the last election. I mean, let's dispense with the idea that the left gives a single flying fuck about election integrity, right? I mean, you don't even need to look at. You don't even need people slipping in fake ballot papers or machines flipping. You don't need any of that to realize that all they needed to do was change the rules. So you had all these drop boxes everywhere, and it was far easier for them to get their vote out and far less easy for the right to get the right's vote out because more rural places, fewer drop boxes. It's all, that alone stole the election. And when you couple those two things together, the migratory change, well, let's add the border into that as well, okay? Let's add the tens of thousands of people streaming in every day across the border. You add those, that triumvirate is the death of America right there. That's but you know what? I'm kind of an accelerationist in that regard. I'm like, look, if you guys really want to, what are they talking about now? $3 trillion and another part of stimulus and raising the debt ceiling again. Yeah, look at every single other time in human history. Trust me, we're British. We understand this. That an empire, that a global power attempted to kind of spend its way and debt its way out of, mire, philosophical or financial mire. Never has it ever worked. And I am not of the belief that the political class is making a mistake. I think they are doing it precisely on purpose.
Yeah.
One of the things that we focus on the National Pulse is where and why these people are selling the nation out, selling the idea of the nation out. The idea of the nation. What is a nation? Well, firstly and foremostly, it's people living within a landmass with a border. Well, America doesn't have a border right now, so you can't really call it a functioning country or nation. And then you look at all the, the investments. I think the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States of America is invested in Chinese Communist Party companies, which are linked to China's military. Well, firstly, that shouldn't be allowed in the first instance. And if it does happen, they should go to jail for doing it. And nobody's even talking about it. David Cameron, let's bring it a bit close to home. David Cameron has tons of investment in Chinese property that he was effectively given, cut price rate by the Chinese Communist Party. Why did David Cameron? I mean, you remember all of that debate around the nuclear power stations and Hinkley Point and all of that. Why did David Cameron never stare down the Chinese Communist Party? It wasn't that he thought China was going to wage war on the United Kingdom. He wanted his 400 grand or whatever was coming off the back of that property deal that he was doing. It doesn't cost a lot to bribe politicians, because here's the thing. Politicians are fundamentally untalented people who 6 figures sounds like a ton of money to them, because they aren't innovators. They aren't geniuses. They aren't people who build companies and things. They aren't Elon Musks or Kanye Wests or, captains of industry in any way, shape or form. And by the way, how weird is it to say that? Those are the current captains of industry. The people that we're told to think are weird and keep an arm's length away from these people are the people who the same people that kind of built this country 100 years ago. You think they were boring, stuffy old dudes? No, they were eccentrics. They said crazy things. I mean, let's not even get into the crazy shit that Henry Ford was saying, 100 years ago. I mean, Henry Ford, and I'm not justifying this, but I'm just saying you get these quirky eccentricities and they might be reprehensible. Henry Ford had the Protocols of the Elders of Zion printed and distributed around the United States of America. It's a wild anti-Semite. But this is what you get with real thinkers who make money and create jobs and all of that. Joe Biden's never done a day's work in his whole life. Somebody gave me a statistic the other day. Maybe I'll butcher this, but Joe Biden has been in American politics for 25% of the country's entire history. What? Yeah.
That literally, if you're just listening to this, that literally just made my jaw drop. I mean, I think it's well known in political circles and in, if you've ever worked even slightly close to political news media, when they started pushing Biden as the leader of the party, everyone went, really? That guy? He's thick as pig shit. Like, what has he ever done that's useful? I remember sitting down with one of the guys who, he actually came on the show once and we kind of ripped him apart. He runs one of the big Democratic super PACs. I sat down with him once and he was just like, oh, Joe's just easier. He's just easier. And then I was also told that I wasn't allowed, because I wanted to do a one-on-one with, filmed obviously, but with Hunter, and I was told point blank, oh, I can't leave you alone in a room with Hunter. And I was like, you fucking what? I was like, didn't Me Too happen? Anyway, I guess that goes back into your whole Boris Johnson thing. I think he's a dribbly little frizzy head prick. But I do have a couple of friends who work with him, and they agree. So that's at least nice. But no, when you're so
Hunter's
right.
at least interesting though. But Hunter's at least interesting. Hunter's not Joe. At least Hunter has some personality to him. I've listened to his book on audiobook twice now.
Wow.
And you can call him all sorts of. And by the way, most of it's fake. Like most of the Biden family law is fake. Biden murdered 7 children in Afghanistan, and Jen Psaki had the temerity to stand at the podium and say, well, of course, the president has dealt with the loss of a child. Like, fuck you. This guy just droned young children. You're going to invoke Beau Biden dying of cancer? Like, 10 years ago.
Oh, that's their go-to party trick. They're just like, I had a son who died of cancer. Fucking everyone knows someone who's died of cancer.
Yeah,
Sorry.
for sure. For sure.
Like,
No, it's absolutely true.
Focus on, the SARS-CoV-2, blah, 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 instead of the disease that's actually killing people. Oh, yeah?
But Hunter is interesting. And I would, open invitation to Hunter Biden, because you're obviously watching this. I would sign anything you want me to sign to just go out for a night out with you in LA.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. I would sign. I would NDA up the wazoo for that experience, right? Because
I feel like we should do Miami though, and I have a really logical explanation as to why. There's too much fentanyl in the cocaine in Los Angeles. So
well, I think that's in Miami too. I think that's everywhere. I don't even think you need to drug him up necessarily. I think he might just be an interesting guy. I think he's all sorts of fucked up, and I think it might be really interesting to just chat with him for about 16 hours straight. And by the sounds of it, both you, I know him can chat for 16 hours straight. So
straight up. Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of which, we are unfortunately running out of time here, and I have to jump on and do the news tonight. Or I guess it'll be yesterday because this is coming out tomorrow. I don't fucking know. So a couple of quick questions before we wrap, and then you absolutely have to come back on at some point, and we're definitely going to hang out because I'm going to bully you into being my friend now. First question, do you still smoke cigarettes? And if so, what cigarettes do you smoke so I can absolve my own guilt?
Parliaments, and yes.
Oh my God, you posh bastard. I'm still on my Marlboros.
No, Parliaments aren't posh.
Well, they're a little bit posh. It's not golden vag, but like...
I just like the recessed filter. I don't like when the filter touches my tongue when I smoke. Try it.
Okay, I'll try Parliament.
Tell me I'm not right.
I will. I've got to go buy another box. Oh, that was a big linguistic shift when I moved out here, and I nearly said the word that we're not allowed to use to refer to cigarettes because, felt like I was back in Britain. I was describing roll-up cigarettes the other day to one of my friends here. He was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, we just sit outside, drink pints, and smoke roll-ups and argue. Like that's just what you do in Britain." He's like, "In the rain." And I'm like, "Yeah, smoke my roll-ups. I do." But rollies. Oh, rollies. I miss rollies. But okay, now I've forgotten what my other question was. Oh, yeah, obviously. What do we plug in? Where are people going? You got to send me all the links, so I'll put them in the description. But do all that stuff because we got to, because we're professional.
It's real simple. The website is thenationalpulse.com. We are entirely crowd-funded. I don't rely on advertising or billionaires or donors or foundations or whatever. We have 4,000 members who give an average of $8 a month. And to join that, the website is fundrealnews.com because that's what we do, real news. And, I'm on all the social medias. For Kate's sake, I'll say get on GETTR. It's really great.
Yes.
We love GETTR. So get on GETTR if you're not on it already. And that will make Kate, our mutual friend, leave me alone for another day. And that is just a day of beautiful silence and peace. So please get on GETTR.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're definitely all going to have to go out drinking in DC at some point too. With Hunter maybe though in LA, which would be even better. Raheem, thank you so much.
Let's go up to New York and surprise Kate.
She's been nagging me. That's probably the most consistent text I get every day. It's like, when you come in, when you come in, when you come in. I don't know why she suddenly sounds like she's
from her. The most consistent text I get from Kate is what you're wearing, and it's just weird.
Oh, really? You sending those like selfies? Yeah, I'm gonna start sending her selfies too, like the ones on my Instagram. No, but thank you so much. This was fucking lovely and beautiful, and you're wonderful. And I hope to fuck this recorded, because if it didn't, I'm gonna feel like a right twat. But
that'd be real bad.
Yeah, we'll jump on again. Go buy some Marmite, everyone. Okay, love you. Bye.